The Power of Visionary Leadership. Hi, I'm Diane here at Someone Gets Me, and Steven Sashen is with us today, and he is a visionary leader. Not only has he been a stand-up comic and a successful screenwriter and a competitive sprinter, he's a really fast guy, right? He now owns, with his wife, Lena, Xero Shoes. And I actually own Xero Shoes. I have 5 pairs of them, and I love them. And what drew me to Steven was his great, amazing way of expressing himself and getting the point across as a visionary for how to create something really amazing. So I want to welcome to the Someone Gets Me podcast, Steven Sashen. Welcome, Steven.
Thank you. Wow, the pressure is seriously on right now.
Oh, no, this is really fun because
Love to live up to.
All of us really are visionaries and love to just kind of follow our heart's desire. So the first question I have for you is, when did you realize that you were this kind of creative visionary type person?
I don't know, because I just don't think of myself that way. I think of myself as someone who was just a little too old to have gotten Ritalin as a kid. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs and small business people. And so for whatever reason, it just never occurred to me not to just try to do what I thought was interesting. And it just so happens that if I do those things well, they generated enough money that I didn't have to have some other job. So I've never had an actual job. I've never had a resume. I've never interviewed for a job. I'm tempted to do it just to see what it's like, frankly, because I have no clue. But I guess, how do I want to put it? It's been obvious to me for a long time that many of the ideas I come up with are unfortunately a little too far out there. So they're a bit of a stretch, and it takes a while for people to catch up to the ideas. Mm-hmm. And I'm also, another thing that I realized is that I'm a little hyper-optimistically naive. And so I work on the assumption that best thing wins. So I'm a competitive sprinter. And I was an All-American gymnast way back when, All-American sprinter at 58 years old now. And so as a single, what's the word I'm looking for? As a solo athlete, sport person, solo, guy sport where it's one person against another, or it's just really you against you. I made the assumption that best man wins. And what I discovered is that's not true. So there are people who do underhanded, interesting business things that pull the rug out from underneath that. But my thing was always, I'm going to answer your question this way. My wife, who's my co-founder and CFO in Xero Shoes, she says, we're a really great team, but I have the really fun job of being able to think of all the cool things that we're going to try and make happen in the future. And her job is to tell me we don't have enough money to do that. And so, or I like to say that, I'm building a car. She makes sure there's tires on the wheels and gas in the tank. And so again, I don't think of myself as a something, but I'm aware that the way that I think is about the big picture in the future. And that's always been the case. And when I bring products to market as a result, they're often a little ahead of their time, which is not a good thing. The people who've copied me have made more money than I have because I sort of teed it up and, they hit it off the tee.
Right, because when you're the visionary and you're ahead, I always say that whatever I'm journaling about today will show up in the world in about 2 years. and that's kind of what you're saying. It's like, okay, you're so enough ahead of your time that the wave hits late.
Well, it's actually been a little different for me, and that is, it's not that I'm that far ahead of my time. It's that I'm usually changing what the status quo is. I'm usually identifying what the problem is with the status quo and solving that. And it takes a little while for people to catch up to that. And of course, it becomes what we've done has been so obvious that then other people start copying it. So just as an aside, prior to Xero Shoes, back in 1992, I started a company. I invented the industry standard word processing software for film and television writers. In the almost 30 years since then, the only thing that's happened is people trying unsuccessfully to copy what I did. And with the footwear world, what we're doing in a way is actually going back in time to when shoes were made like ours. We can talk about that later. But what's happened in the last 50 years is the big shoe companies have been convincing people of things that are patently false. And so there's this sort of, like wall of propaganda that we are trying to beat up. The good news is, what we're doing is simple and obvious and makes sense, and the experience people have is very profound. And so it's not like we're trying to convince anybody of anything. We need to give people the experience, and the rest takes care of itself. That just takes time, especially when you're up against a couple $100 billion worth of competition.
Oh, exactly. And it takes education too, because it's kind of, if you've been fed this same amount of information about anything forever, and then somebody else says, well, wait a second, look at it from this angle, then it takes a minute. Right?
It takes something, but I would contend that education is not quite the thing, because people believe that people believe they're wearing the shoes they're wearing for a good reason, even if that reason is that some 21-year-old kid at a shoe store who learned what to say from the company that sells the shoes he's trying to sell you told you what to do. You think you made a rational decision, and you can't talk people out of rational decisions with rational data. But what you can do is point to people's own experience in such a way that they realize that what they really experience or believe and what they're doing are not in sync. And then to reconcile that, they may find that the right direction to go is the one that you're pointing to. So, for example, when people ask me what I do for a living, I say, well, let me ask you a weird question. Do your feet feel better at the end of the day than they did at the beginning of the day? And everyone always says no. And I go, do you know why? And they go, and they'll have a whole bunch of answers. They'll say flat feet or high arches or whatever it is. And I go, no, it's because your shoes aren't letting your feet do what's natural, which is bending, moving, flexing, and feeling the world. There's a reason you have a quarter of the bones and joints of your whole body in your feet and ankles, and more nerve endings in your soles than anywhere but your fingertips and your lips. You're supposed to use those things, and your shoes aren't letting you. And you see them go, huh. And then it goes from there. So they have suddenly this cognitive dissonance between their own experience and what they're doing based on their own experience.
Mm-hmm. I love your description of that, because it's so accurate. It's so accurate. Like I told you before we started recording, I have 5 pairs of your shoes, and that was well before I asked you to be on the podcast, because I was watching one of your videos and I'm like, that makes sense. Huh. I'm recovering from an injury, and what I was told and this are not the same. There was that dissonance. And it's like what they told me helped to a certain point, but it wasn't doing the rest, right? And I thought, well, okay. And then I watched the video again on another day, and I'm pondering this whole thing, and I'm like, and I'm pretty well educated, and I kind of pay attention to things, and I'm a visionary, and something about this, I just have to pay attention. So I kind of did the math. I said, okay, well, let me order a couple pairs. And the very worst is it's a total loss. And the very best is something wonderful. And then anything in the middle, right? So I order them. And of course, COVID's going on, and I wait, and they get here, and I tried them on, and I walk my dog for every morning for 2 miles. I put them on to go on the walk. And I came back feeling better than when I left, which was the first time since this car accident. And I'm like, oh my, it was stunning to me. And I had a couple of people look at them and go, well, you can't wear those because they don't have arch support. They don't have this and that. So then, because I'm a gifted person, I almost have that whole video memorized of what you were teaching. And I said it. I said, well, this is what it is, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh, I have to look those shoes up. But it was just one of those things where that got me thinking. And then I'm like, I'm getting ready to go on a trip to the mountains. And I'm like, hold on a second. I need to have shoes, not sandals. It's going to be 40 degrees. I have to order more. I didn't think to go shopping. I thought to go to your website, because I already know that I'm going to feel good in them.
Right.
And so I appreciate your visionary skill, your ability to bring it to market, and your tenacity, because I get to be one of the benefactors. And I'm sure there's thousands of people that are walking around going, thank you, Steven. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. And it's stories like yours that get us out of bed in the morning, because running a business is hard. Running a footwear business, oh my God. So at about the 7-month mark when we started the company, which was almost 11 years ago,
we were at our dining room table with a bunch of guys who'd been in the footwear business for a long time. They said, we love you guys and we believe in you and we believe what you're doing is really important. And we want to start this company with you. But we've been in footwear for so long that we're not stupid enough to try and start a shoe company. And Lena and I said, yeah, we know that we're hyper optimistic and naive, but that's the only way anything ever happens. So, away we go. But boy, were they right. I mean, it is really, really challenging. And it's just hearing from now hundreds of thousands of people who've had stories like yours and similar that, really get us out of bed. And it's not rocket science. I mean, the thing that's interesting is all I'm doing is telling the truth. It's not hard. Now, finding different ways of doing that to communicate that in a way that people understand, that's the interesting challenge. And my tenacity, if you will, it comes from two things, maybe three. One, Lena and I are on the entrepreneurial retirement program, so we don't really have a choice. I'm 58. It's either this or nothing. I'll be working at Quiznos making sandwiches for people. Two, I don't like it when people make money by lying to other people, and that's what most of the footwear industry is. And three, I like being right. And so you put all those together, and that just it's very motivating. And we're trying to change the world. I mean, that sounds grandiose and hyperbolic, but we know that what we're doing is legit. In fact, we know that the CEOs of some major footwear brands, $1 billion plus brands, have said to friends of ours that what we're doing at Xero Shoes is real, but they can't do it because it would be admitting that what they've been doing for 50 years is a lie. Wow. And so, when we hear things like that, or when I debate people who are from big footwear companies and just they have no response to the things that I say, we know that we're onto something. And my only hope is that I live long enough to see the fruition of this. And I'm not, it could happen, but these things normally are like a generational seismic shift. And I've got about a generational left in me before, things get bad probably.
Oh, you never know, right? So
you never know.
You never know. How has your naivete, if you will, benefited you, like in your life, like not just in Xero Shoes, but I mean.
No, I'll show you a Xero Shoes example for the fun of it.
Okay, show me one.
These straps on the shoe, and the instep here and around actually the instep here in the midfoot here, they're not sewn down, so you can use these to adjust the tension around your foot. Well, I had never seen anyone do that before, but just from watching feet and understanding biomechanics, I thought of that idea, and no one had ever done it in the last 50 years of footwear. And when I asked a couple of friends of mine, including our chief product officer, why did no one think of this? All the footwear designers had the same response. They said, yeah, you thought of it because you don't know anything about footwear. So you're looking at this from a fresh perspective instead of reinventing the wheel. And so that's that. But fundamentally, I mean, the answer is it never occurs to me. I don't have the thought of, how do I want to put this? I don't even know how to say this. If something occurs to me as like something I want to do and I think I can make a go of it, I just do it.
Yeah.
I mean, why not? Because, worst thing, like what you said, worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work. All right, whatever.
Right. Keep on going, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell people a lot that I was born with being like spiritually naive in a way. Like I just do things and then just see how it happens. And it always works out. I always get pointed in the right direction. And usually I amaze myself at whatever comes out. So when you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. I like that. I think that's neat. So,
and I'm not, and just to be clear, it's not like I haven't had things that have not fallen apart, horribly. That happens, but I guess I'm also lucky enough to have another psychological problem, and that is I have no memory. So if something goes wrong, I've forgotten about it. And I was at my 30th high school reunion 10 years ago. Sadly, there won't be a 40th because of COVID. But I remember walking up to some people and saying, hey, I have like very few memories of you right now, but I have like a memory that maybe we're supposed to be mad at each other. And since I can't remember why I'm not, I just want to double check and see if you are and if I should know anything about that. Invariably, people thought that I was completely insane, which I'm not going to argue with. But I mean, there are people who have cost us many, many tens of thousands of dollars in business by not sticking to agreements or doing things wrong, et cetera. And I don't take that personally. And so my wife calls it my most confusing and endearing quality, that when I bump into these people, I'm happy to see them. I'm, want to know what they're up to. I'm curious, but they're all freaked out because they think I'm mad at them because it cost me tens of thousands of dollars. It's gone. That's a memory.
Yeah, that's a great asset to have, right?
It's very confusing to a lot of people.
Right. Well, because like you said, they're expecting you to still be holding on to whatever that old energy is. And for you, it's like long gone. It's like it's not a thing anymore. It's gone.
Yeah. I don't remember what I had for breakfast, let alone what they did to me.
That's called living in the moment, right?
Yeah, it's called having no memory. It's early Alzheimer's. I don't know what it is.
Or maybe it's all the above. I don't know.
Yeah. I just don't make a thing of it. I just call it one of my many psychological problems.
That's a good way to look at it. So what started you wanting to do footwear? I mean, because you're an athlete, you've done all kinds of neat stuff and comedy and everything. And so how did the footwear thing even come into your consciousness to start with? Like, because it's you have such a varied, interesting track. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, how did it get in there?
Well, I can tell you what the track is for me. It's always been, I'm always curious about the underlying reality of something. So I have, like, when someone says, here's the truth about something, I'm always kind of curious to see if there's something underneath that is a more essential thing than whatever they just landed on. And in a way, like I have a radar for urban mythology. And I'll tell you what I mean. This is something that developed over years, where I can hear certain things where I can just tell that it's not real, that it's mythology. There's just a certain ring. But where this really kicked in was the umpteenth time someone had told me that you need to write down your goals, because there was a study of the 1954 class from Princeton, and they found that that 20 years later, the top 3% were more successful than the other 97%, and the only difference between them was that the top 3% wrote down their goals. And for some reason around that time, and I had been just doing a lot of things of investigating my thoughts and beliefs at that time, and something in that just rang wrong to me. I did the math. I mean, I made a spreadsheet and showed that if one of the people in that class was the son of the Sultan of something or other, he was already worth more than everybody else combined. So just something seemed awry. And then I called a friend of mine who's a big deal psychologist and personal transformation guy, and I said, you quoted this study to me before. Have you ever seen the study? And he says, no. And I said, that's unusual, because you're a big research guy. So I put out the word online saying I'd pay $1,000 to anyone who showed me the study. And I'll pay $1,000 to anyone who can prove the study didn't happen, even though it's impossible to prove the non-existence of a thing. 5 minutes later, the guy who founded Snopes.com emailed me and said, oh, here's a whole article that was written where someone tried to track down this study and it doesn't exist. And I said, wow, you did that so easily. I'm a little anxious about paying you. Actually, I said, yeah, $1,000. So I'm a little anxious about giving you the $1,000. He goes, oh, I wasn't expecting you to give me anything. I said, oh, then here's $500. Mm-hmm. So happy to contribute to what you're doing. So for whatever reason, like, that was the pivotal moment where I just found myself really, really attentive to what someone's saying and where's the belief in there and what's underneath that. Mm-hmm. So that's been true when I developed software. It's true when I was doing comedy. It's true. I mean, it's really the through line. So anyway, that's a tangent. But the specific answer to your question is, I got back into sprinting 15 years. Wait, how long ago? 13 years ago, after a 30-year break. I was 45. All those numbers do work in the same sentence somehow.
Yes.
and for 2 years, I was getting injured constantly. And a friend of mine who's a world champion runner, which in Boulder is like saying the guy standing next to me at Whole Foods, because there's world champion runners everywhere. This one friend of mine said, try running barefoot and see what you learn. And I learned from doing that why I was getting injured and how naturally to stop getting injured. And the gist is that when I was running barefoot, there was a problem with my form that I couldn't feel when I was in shoes, but was very obvious when I was barefoot. And by trying to find a way to run that didn't hurt, that's where my form changed. My injuries went away. I became faster. I'm a Masters All-American sprinter, as I mentioned. That means I'm one of the fastest guys in the country in my age group, or technically for men over 55, you might be talking to the fastest Jew in the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and not much competition there, I will confess. So,
But it's a
so
great
from that
title
there,
to hold, you know, it's a great title.
I do own worldsfastestjew.com, but I haven't done anything with it. Um, so I don't really have a Jewish identity per se, but it's such a good thing. So from that barefoot experience, I just wanted to have that natural movement thing all the time. But there's some places that don't like it if you're in bare feet, and some surfaces that are not great for bare feet. And so I made some sandals based on a 10,000-year-old design idea. I made them for my wife and then a couple of other barefoot runners, and they told two friends, and they told two friends, and so on and so on. And then one day a guy says, if you had treated this little sandal making hobby like a business and put it and had a website, I could put it in a book that we're writing. And so I rush home. I pitch this brilliant idea to my wife, and she assures me that I have my head firmly up my butt and that it's a horrible idea, it won't make any money, big distraction, waste of time. And I'm a good husband, so I said, yeah, you're probably right. And I'm a typical husband, so after she went to bed, I built a website. And then it just took off, and literally everything since then has just been learning as much as we can, as fast as we can, and doing something super, super complicated, which is making footwear.
Wow, that's a great way of how it started. I was curious about like, where did the footwear part come in? And that makes sense, you know, because you could actually feel it. And it's funny, I have a client who is a runner, and he was running somewhere in California and couldn't keep his traction with his shoes and fell and just completely injured himself. And I said, I think you should try these shoes. I said, the runners use them. I said, I'm not a runner, but I walk a lot and hike a lot, and I see it, and I understand the education, but I understand it. And so I gave him your website because I thought, well, you know, he does like running on mountains and cliffs and trails and, and things like that. And he apparently slid on something because he didn't have good footing.
Well, the other thing that happens with traditional footwear, where you've got a big elevated sole and typically an elevated heel as well, is and usually a flared sole also, is the higher you get, the worse your balance is. The less you can feel, the worse your balance is. The less your foot can bend and flex and move, the worse your balance is. And if you have a big, thick shoe with an elevated heel, you tend to land with your foot out in front of your body, in front of your center of mass, which is an unbalanced position as well. And so natural running, if you're running either barefoot or in shoes like ours, you end up putting your feet underneath your body more and using your muscles and ligaments and tendons as the natural springs and shock absorbers they're supposed to be, rather than trying to rely on the padding in your shoes, which, by the way, starts to wear out the moment you bring them home, and is usually in not great shape within as little as 150 miles, which for some people is just a couple weeks.
That's very interesting. I noticed, I'm thinking back to when I started wearing your shoes, and I didn't mean for this to be like a commercial, but I noticed that after a couple of weeks, I'm like, I'm able to stand up straighter, and I feel better, and I feel more in my body, like rounded.
Yeah,
and you just described
absolutely.
it, and I'm like, it is the shoes. So now when everybody asks me, you think it's the shoes? I'm going to say, I spoke to the owner of the company, and it is the shoes. See,
well, you know, I'm going to take
listen to the podcast.
And I'm totally going to take that. And the shoes are really just getting out of the way. I mean, look, footwear, when human beings invented footwear, is how do I protect the bottom of my foot and how do I hold that on? And really, that's all we're doing with some variations on a theme. You don't need to add magic bullshit technology. I mean, my favorite example, and look, the guys who are marketers for these big shoe companies, they're brilliant. They come up with things that look really convincing, that make you think, oh, that's good. But again, if you get underneath it,
right,
it's not what you see, what it seems. So like Adidas came out with a thing they call Boost Foam. And the way they showed how great the Boost Foam was, they bounced this 2-pound steel ball, maybe it was 2 pounds, off the Boost Foam, and they compared it to bouncing it off the other company's foam. Well, no other company used the other company's foam, for one, but watching the ball bounce was a very compelling thing, except that you are not a 2-pound steel ball. And that's the most important piece of the puzzle. It's like if you understand anything about physics, then that example is completely nonsense. But if you don't, it's a compelling visual that sticks in people's heads. And so it's all all we're doing is letting your body do what bodies are naturally designed to do. and they work really well. And the answer for that, the proof of that is just go find tribal societies where they're wearing shoes that are like the original sandals I made, just a little thing to protect their foot and something to hold that on. That's it. They don't have podiatrists. They don't have foot and ankle problems the way we do here in the West. They're not wearing orthotics. They don't come home at the end of a 100-mile run and need to recover for days. And people say, well, I didn't grow up that way. I go, well, yeah, but you also didn't grow up like the 105-pound Kenyan marathoner who runs a 2-hour and 2-minute marathon, but you're buying the shoes that he's being paid to wear because you think that those shoes are the thing that makes the difference, not the way he grew up. So you have the same situation. You didn't grow up this way or this way, but you're believing this one because shoe companies told you, and not believing this one because there's not a whole lot of money telling you to try this one.
Right. So people can be easily swayed and believe things that aren't necessarily where they, I don't think a lot of people use their critical thinking as much as maybe they could be,
We're definitely not built for it. We're built to make very quick decisions and stick to them. We're built to look in the distance, and if the grass is doing this, we have to quickly decide, is that something I'm going to eat or something that wants to eat me? And then we lock onto that idea that when we see the grass do this and not this, that means something, even though we can be wrong about what we deduced. But if you had to try to figure this out every time, you'd be dead. So we're wired to create beliefs as quickly as we can and then lock onto them because it's not energy efficient to try to rethink it through every time. There are people, I'm one of them, and there are many, many others, who for whatever reason, when we kind of feel that urge to lock onto a new belief, we can the way I explain it is I can almost feel the energy that it takes to do it. And it's like, oh, that's unpleasant. Let's take a look and see what else is going on.
Yes. I like the second question, looking at what is underneath everything, because I always say it's the second question that's the most important question. What's going on underneath the radar, like that program that's running in the computer that you don't know it's there until it shows up.
Yeah. Can I tell you a fun story about that?
Yes.
So I have a thing that I came up with that I call the one question. And where this came from was one day I'm visiting my parents. Lena's here at home. We'd been having some fight about something or some problem. It was very early in our relationship, something we hadn't resolved. I can't remember even what it was. And I was indulging in my favorite hobby, which is the righteously indignant fantasy. I do this when I'm driving. I imagine I'm going to get pulled over by a cop and I'll talk my way out of the ticket with some humiliating logic. In this case, I was imagining that we were seeing a therapist. And Lena said something, and I asked a question to her in my mind that was so profound that it not only stopped her in her tracks, but in my mind, the therapist, this imaginary therapist, was thinking, wow, I'm going to do nothing other than ask that one question to people from now on. And the question was, how long, like literally give me a date and time, how long do you want to keep using this problem as an excuse to be unhappy? Mm-hmm. So that's the first question. But to your point, the more important second question is, and the answer is whatever you want. Could be this moment, could be an hour from now, could be the end of my life, could be never. I don't care. For me, it was I want to stop. And then I had to answer my own question.
Of course.
So I said, I want to stop using this as an excuse to be unhappy now. And then the second question occurred to me, which is, what am I going to do to prove that I'm no longer using this problem as an excuse to be unhappy? Mm-hmm. And I immediately came up with an answer. And when I got home, a day or two later, I presented this answer. And within no time, we had resolved the whole issue. So I love the one question just sort of takes it out of context. Right. And the second question, which it puts it into practice. So I love your idea of the second question is the important one.
Yes, it is. And I love that example of it, because it's very powerful when you start thinking that way, because once you had that action and you were willing to take it and follow it,
something will change. Yeah. Something's going to change. It might not fix the thing immediately, but it's going to shift something in a way that's going to create a new situation with a different, more openness and possibilities.
Right. And once that openness is there and you have those possibilities, now there's more choice and more freedom.
Exactly.
And then however we want to go from there works better.
Yeah.
It's really cool. That's fun. I love it. So what do you do to take care of yourself? You run this big business. You're a creative visionary. What do you do? What do you do for you?
Well, the most important thing is watch television.
Okay.
And, and I say that because at the end of a long day, and almost all of them are, Lane and I'll come home, we'll make some dinner. Thanks to COVID, I was always a good cook, but I've become really good. I make like our top 10 favorite things now, which is really splendid, and a few things that I like that Lena doesn't. So make some food and then curl up on the couch and watch TV and just chill out. So that's part one.
Mm-hmm.
And part two is, of course, food. That's another thing that's helpful.
Right.
And then I'm a competitive sprinter still, so I'm on the track on the weekends. And then during the week, I'm doing some other kinds of workouts to basically help what I'm doing as a sprinter. So and what's been challenging for me is finding things that fit in there that don't add more stress. So lately I've been doing these workouts during the week that only take like 15 to 25 minutes tops. And I can do 3 or 4 of those in a week without having to worry. I'll get home. I've got 20 minutes before Lena's done doing whatever she's doing and before whatever I'm cooking is ready to, come out of the oven. So it's perfect timing. If I had to make time to work out, I just don't have it right now. So finding the thing that fit in our busy entrepreneurial schedule has taken quite a bit of time. But it just feels important. I mean, we've got a bunch of cool workout gear in the back of the office too. And every time I walk by that, I do something. So that's most of it. But a big part of it, frankly, is that I don't have to do a whole lot because I'm really, really lucky that I'm married to this amazing, wonderful woman. And we're a really good team as a couple and as a business couple. Mm-hmm. And so if it weren't for that, the difficulty and stress would be really, really challenging. But this has been super, super satisfying for both. Well, I'll speak for myself. It's been the most satisfying thing I've ever done is working with Lena. And that's taken care of me a lot.
Yeah, that's great. And like you mentioned earlier, that you balance off each other with your skill set and the way you think and see things. And so you not only have the support personal relationship wise, but business wise, a complementary skill sets pays off huge because it does decrease the stress when somebody gets you and then they can, follow you and they know how to communicate with you in the way that you can hear and you can communicate with them. And that really decreases the stress, I believe.
It's true. Oh, and two other things. We have I got, thanks to the magic of Craigslist, I got an infrared sauna that we're in a few times a week. Mm-hmm. And during the summer, I jump in Boulder Creek. And jumping in freezing cold, rushing water is the best. I had a good friend called me one day in some sort of emotional upheaval. And I said, I don't want to hear it right now. Just bring a bathing suit and get over here. And so he brings his bathing suit over and he starts to tell me, I don't want to hear it yet. Let's just go jump in the creek. So we jump in the creek and he gets out and he starts to say whatever's going on. I said, well, not yet. Just jump in one more time. And he jumps in one more time. I said, okay, now what was the problem? He goes, I don't remember.
The cold water got rid of it. Yeah. The rushing water swept it away. It did. It does. It totally does. It totally does. I love doing. I used to have an infrared sauna, and I love it. I love them. They're very nourishing to the body and soul. So, what do you see for the future?
Mine, yours, the world,
the world first, and then your world second.
No idea for the first, and no idea for the second.
All right, well, that's.
It's a funny thing. I have ideas about what's possible with what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But I don't, I'm not married to any of them. Mm-hmm. So if I were 35, that question would be very different because I'd have a lot of years ahead of me. And I believe very strongly in what we're doing because it's true. And, and I would really I'd be talking about, the next 20 years. But at 58, and after almost 11 years in business, I'm thinking about what I want to do that's not working because I like not working. And I miss having time with my wife where we take long vacations and things like that. So I really don't know. There's a lot of opportunities that are showing up. And we're, as always, just trying to identify what the best one is and go with that and see where that takes us. But we do have so the vision for the company, I say that we're trying to make natural movement the obvious, better, healthy choice. Well, actually, I'll say it differently. We're helping people remember that natural movement is the obvious, better, healthy choice, the way natural food is. And of course, we'd like to be the preeminent brand that's providing products that support that. So that's the big picture on the business side. And on the personal side, we're simple people. Just, it'd be nice to have some time off. So I have no idea how those are going to work together. My friends have a bet that if we sold this company, there's a bet on how long it would be until I started another company. And right now there's even money on 8 months. And what I'm really expecting is that even if some big company came and bought us out, that I'd still have some role that would be useful for them and fun for me, that wouldn't interfere with that taking some time off and enjoying life with my wife part.
Right. I don't think that you could stop being the visionary that you are. I don't know that. I think it's just in your DNA, and it's just how you are. Even if you're laying on the couch or you're on vacation with your wife or doing whatever, I don't know that the visions and the ideas and the creativity
No, you're right.
will stop.
But
I don't think it'll ever stop.
No, that's true. But the bar will be raised. The bar for, do I want to do something about this will be raised.
Yeah, a whole different conversation on action.
Yeah, Lena and I were retired from 2000 to 2009. We'd done some clever investing that was throwing off enough money, not a lot, but just enough that we realized if we lived comfortably and frugally, we were done working. And that's a pretty impressive kind of place to be. Not impressive. It was wonderful opportunity is what it was. And it took a couple of years to kind of get over the idea of needing to do anything. And I have a friend actually who I met during that time who he had a lot of money from businesses he started and sold. And I said, what was the most interesting thing once you realized you were off the financial grid? And he said, I spent 2 years where I wouldn't get out of bed until it was 100% crystal clear to me that I never needed to do anything ever again. And he said, at first it would take me a couple hours till I got out of bed. But at the 2-year mark, I could just get out of bed and it was very clear that I was done. And it took years till anything motivated him to do anything other than like renovate his house and make it a beautiful place to hang out. And then he decided to write a book and, self-publish that and had some fun with that. But the idea of if you don't need to work for a living, what really gets you out of bed, what really makes you want to do something, especially when you know that some of the things that you're going to think of are going to add more stress and difficulty to your life.
Right, right.
Really want to do, and that's a question that most people don't get to answer. Or the other question is, what does enough mean? Yes. And that's another one that most people don't ask or answer, because I don't know about you, but when I first moved to New York City, when I was 21, I guess, everything I owned fit in the back of a Mustang. And most of what I owned was books. So I didn't even need those really. So everything I owned could fit in that I cared about, could fit in a decent sized suitcase. That's enough. Right. Everything after that, if you really get clear about and enough could be that you don't need anything, and it could be that you need $1 million. I don't know. But if you don't know what it is, you're going to keep staying on that loop, on that treadmill, trying to get to somewhere that you haven't even figured out yet, because you just don't know the answer to enough. And sometimes it takes some practice of living differently than you think to discover whether what you thought enough is enough, or if you need more, or if you need less. When we were in retired mode, we were giving away 20% of the money we were earning because we just didn't need it. And it was really fun to every month find someone new who needed a couple of $1,000 and giving it to them and, surprising the crap out of them. It was a blast.
Right. Oh, that's so fun. It's my favorite was leaving one of those Humane Society things where they have puppies and kitties to pet and adopt. And we weren't in adoption mode, but we were always in petting puppies and kitties mode. Right.
And on the way out, I said, "Can I give you a donation here? Can I write you a check?" They said, "Sure." And so I wrote a check for $500 and folded it up and handed it to the guy. And we walked out of the little RV and get about 3 steps outside the door, and then we hear, "Oh my God!" No one had ever handed him a $500 check before. It's a blast.
Oh, that brings such joy to your heart, that.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It's like I have goosebumps with that story. That's really, that's wonderful. It's wonderful. So I have another couple questions, if you don't mind. Okay. One is, what is the most memorable food you've ever eaten?
Well, you could have qualified that. The most memorable food I've ever eaten is, and I'll do positive and negative, because they both
Okay.
came from the same place.
Okay.
So it was when I was in Thailand 30 something years ago. And the best thing was mangosteen, fresh mangosteen. It looks like a little purple grenade. The fruit inside is white, and it's kind of like peachy, and it's indescribable. It's phenomenal. And in that same trip, I also had durian, which is if evil could be reincarnated as a fruit, that's what durian is. And it smells like gasoline. The texture is incredibly delightful, but the taste, let's just say, it's an acquired taste. And if you like the taste of that, you probably like poking needles in your eyeballs, because holy smokes. I bought some durian when I was back in the States, and to try it again, like, maybe 10 years ago. And we cut up a little piece. We tried it. Couldn't handle it. I threw it in the garbage can in the garage. And an hour later, we walk into the garage, and it was just this overwhelming smell that singed your eyebrows. So those are my two most memorable are two fruits from the same place, from Thailand. Mangosteen, awesome. Durian, the opposite.
Wow. I could smell that just hearing it. Ugh, nasty. Oh, God, that's crazy. So I know that there's probably things you wanted to share, or maybe not, on the show. Is there anything that came to mind that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you about?
Yeah, and this is just from our talk before we started doing this. And I don't remember what made me think of it, but I'll toss this out there. A lot of people who, when they're trying to create something or run a business or start a business or follow some idea that they have, think that there's some magic set of beliefs you need to have, or you need to know things in advance, none of which could be further from the truth. Lena at one point was kind of upset. She said, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I said, none of us know what we're doing. We're making it up every day because no one has ever done what we're doing. And she goes, oh, well, I can do that. It's like, yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. So right. There's one little weird technique that I play with where I'll say, if it feels like I have a problem, I try to describe the problem really. If I'm trying to get unstuck, that's where it came from. If I try to describe the problem as simply as I can, an example, I'm just trying to think of one off the top of my brain. I can't even think of one. The website isn't doing what I want. As an e-commerce company, that's a pretty common complaint. In fact, my fantasy is that one day everything on the website will still be working today as well as it was working yesterday, despite the fact that nothing changed overnight and now it's on fire. Happens. But right. So the website isn't working the way it should. So the next step is to take the problem and literally just do an opposite of that. And there's a lot of them. So one could be the website is working the way it should. Okay, I mean, the code is the code. So if it's doing something weird, it's because the code is weird and we just got to solve that. Or the website isn't doing what it should. Another weird way to do an opposite is I'm not doing what I should. Mm-hmm. It's like, I can find the truth of that too. And then the website is doing, you can find a whole bunch of opposites. And one of those opposites is going to just kind of resonate in such a way that you can tell if you looked for a way to prove it, it would be an action, a next step, a single little step that could change everything. So if I do the website isn't doing what it should and do the opposite of I'm not doing what I should, it's immediately obvious to me, like 5 things that I know I should have been doing that I've been procrastinating about. And then I just need to pick one, the simplest one, to just do that. And that'll be the next step that then changes the landscape after that. So that's my turning problems into solutions thing that I use on a regular basis.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's a great way to get unstuck, those little steps. But I like the opposite part. That's what I like.
It's what we were talking about before is we get these beliefs and we lock onto them. But it's funny that if we look for the opposite of these beliefs, we often find they're at least as true as what we originally started with. And rarely, the opposites are almost always more spacious, not always, but often more spacious and actionable. Some of them, you'll find some that are more spacious, more actionable, that will change what's going on.
Right. And so many people operate off a perception of a belief, like I think I should believe that, or beliefs that are passed down that may or may not even have any truth in them at all, like that study. And so it takes discernment and being willing to say, okay, I'm going to build this as I go, and somehow I'll know what to do next. And we do if we're paying attention, I think.
We figured it out. I mean, people ask me how we got to where we are, and I say, well, I got a master's degree in film way back when, and one of my teachers was a very well-known director, and someone asked him, how do you make a good movie? And he said, well, 90% of making movie is check. I'm not just saying this, doing this for no reason. 90% of making movie is casting, and the other 10% is casting. And so I joke that with business, 90% of whatever happens is luck, and the other 10% is also luck. And there's a whole separate 100% where 90% of that is working your butt off, and the other 10% is hopefully being smart enough to know how to put out those fires that started overnight, even though nothing changed since yesterday. And, I can think of innumerable things that could make this all fall apart tomorrow. I don't have any belief that it's going to work. I don't have any beliefs that I hold on to. I just know there's an infinite number of possibilities, and all we're doing at every moment is trying to figure out, based on everything that's part of how we're made, what the appropriate next step is. And then, do a lot of this and just a lot of being on the lookout.
Mm-hmm. Paying attention.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, I love it. I could talk to you forever about all this stuff, because I love the way you think. And I also really appreciate your visionary talent and your ability to just stay in that flow with it. So naturally,
yeah.
Which makes total sense why you're in the movement business to me. It's like, it all makes sense.
But let's not mythologize this or me at all. I mean, when something goes wrong, my natural pattern is to yell a number of expletives as loud and as fast as I can. And then when I calm down, depending on what it is, anywhere from a minute to a day later, find a bunch of solutions. But I have to go through that phase, just the way it is. So, let's not harbor any illusions that I am just smooth sailing. I'm hitting choppy water that I have made choppy until I can, get the sails right and the boat righted and get things working again.
Well, I work with gifted people, and we always, all of us are very highly emotional, so we can flow and we can have a temper tantrum with the best of them, and all of it, right? And you just reminded me. Now you're reminding me of stories, because I race sailboats, and
cool.
I've raced since I was a child, and I was on this one race on our boat, and the guy who owned it and was steering it was a local attorney. In fact, mostly attorneys were on the boat, and they're hilarious. It's one joke after the other all day long. But then when something's not going right, he would sit back there steering, and he would just scream and yell and act goofy. And we would all just look at him funny. And then one time he was having a fit, and then there was about 5 seconds of quiet. Then he'd go, okay, everybody be calm, just like me. and he was totally not calm, and we were the calm ones. And it's like, you have to find humor in your own, losing it, so that then everything can come back, See, that's part of being the visionary, is the intensity that runs through our veins. It's like, you can't expect everything to be flat. We're not flat. That's what makes it work, though. If you didn't have all that intensity, it wouldn't work. It's the fuel. And if you don't let it out, it would give you ulcers or a heart attack.
It often does seem to be part of the package. I mean, one of my jokes is there's basically 2 roads between my office and my home. One is about a 4-mile stretch with about 6 traffic lights on it, and the speed limit is 55. And invariably, there's someone in front of me doing 40. And I have a fantasy that one day that won't make me want to kill those people. But it's been every day for 5 years, so it seems unlikely that's just the way this, I don't like when things physically or in any way get in my way. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always trying to find, just a way around. And I will confess that I do occasionally use a merging lane illegally to pass those people, and happily have a car fast enough to do it safely. But there's certain things, you get to a certain point where you realize, I'm just not going to go to another workshop to try to get rid of this. That's just the way this one's built.
Yes. Very good. That's so true. It's like, people try to hide those characteristics. I'm like, no. It's the passion that makes it all happen. Where else do you have the fuel? I call it like our our booster rockets. Like, we need that energy, and I don't like when people drive 40 and 55 either. I totally get it. Totally. I'm like, yep. Mm-hmm, sign me up too.
Makes me crazy. And I do. And you know what? Actually, my fantasy is to make it either from or to the office without having to slow down and making it through every light. And it's been, again, 5 years and it's never happened. And the other day, one of my best friends called me. We hadn't talked in a while. And by the time we were off the phone, I realized that I had actually made it through every light without having to slow down. And I didn't get to appreciate it because I was on the phone and didn't notice it.
You missed it, the golden time.
I did. I missed my own fantasy.
Well, now you just have to recreate it again, which will probably take another 5 years.
Probably. Statistically, that's likely.
Oh my word, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. So my final question for you today, which I cannot wait to hear your answer for, is if we were going to have a billboard that the entire world could see that had your name on it, what would you put on that billboard?
Holy smokes, that's a tough one. The only thing that popped in my mind, it was the line from the X-Files, which is "The truth is out there." But I would, I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to go for the X-Files. The truth is out there.
The truth is out there. Beautiful. I love that one. And nobody has said that one yet. So there you go.
Yeah.
I don't ask it to everybody, but I ask it to the visionaries. So everybody, you've been listening to Steven from Xero Shoes. He's also an amazing, talented visionary. And I know that you found great information and inspiration. So let him know that you heard him on the show and reach out to him and try his shoes, because I have 5 pairs of them already. And I can tell you that my life is better because of it. And that was way before I met him and asked him on the show. So remember, everybody, you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a purpose. So go out there and make a difference in the world. And until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, be well.